All right, welcome back to the Here's the Deal channel. Thank you guys for joining me. Let me know if you got a 5x5, if you can see me okay, and if you can hear me okay. This video is brought to you by our brand new design. I need more conspiracy theories. All my old ones turned out to be facts. The link to that is in the description. I want to get right into this by asking you a question. Do badges and uniforms grant special rights? Yes, no, maybe. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. Or is it just a complete fabrication? If you deputize someone, does that give you an extra layer of immunity? Maybe in the minds of some people it does. Maybe in the minds of law enforcement and the people who bow down to and lick the boots of law enforcement, there's such a thing as qualified immunity. Hey, those cops can run that stop sign. You can't. Or like Brianna Strauss said from Federal Way, hey, I can drive 90 miles an hour. You can't. I can abuse that person and I escape any and all liability, but you can't. I can shoot down Daniel Shaver in the hallway of the La Quinta Inn and be completely acquitted and resume with my job and get my back pay, but you can't. You would have been fired and you would have been jailed. So is there such a thing as badges and uniforms granting special rights? If the answer is no, then I've got a story to share with you that was put out on October 5th, 2024, and it goes something like this. A pastor and a sheriff, and this all sounds good, guys, but this is a double psychological operation to get you to let go of what is right, what is true, and what is virtuous. And when you let go of what is right, what is true, and what is virtuous, you are fair game for any kind of lie, any kind of deception that comes along. Because let's face it, it's not the tyrants that are causing us problems. It's not the handful of tyrants in Washington's district of criminals that are causing us the major source of our problems. It's the people that imagine that those tyrants are somehow legitimate. Because when you get tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people believing the people in Washington's district of criminals or in your local police or the federal police or FEMA or any of these people have more power than you, that's where our troubles begin and that's where they lie. So pastor and sheriff join forces to defy tyranny by deputizing the entire church. And this was back during the COVID 1984 by George Orwell scam that, who was it? James Bullard from the St. Louis Federal Reserve said it was a planned, organized shutdown of the U.S. economy. It was ended up being the biggest power and wealth transferred, predicated on an outright lie, not just in America, but globally. And most people fell for it. So what was the remedy in this situation right here? It says, and let me expand this so you can see it. Let me get it a little bit bigger on the screen because it's pretty unbelievable that anybody even thinks along these lines in 2024 with the knowledge that we have available at our fingertips on the internet. In a remarkable act of defiance targeting government lawlessness during COVID 1984 by George Orwell, we're just going to call it, Pastor Caleb Cooper of New Hope Revival Church in New Mexico, alongside Sheriff Glenn Hamilton, carved a path for resisting unconstitutional tyranny in defense of the church and liberty during COVID 1984 that continues to inspire. So what was their path of resistance? It wasn't, hey, we're just going to say no. Nope, we're not doing it. Not going to comply. Ain't going to happen. They decided to fall back on fiction. Speaking in an explosive interview with journalist Alex Newman at the Constitution Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, which is a freaking laugh, and I'm going to expose the hypocrisy of the Sheriffs Association here in a second, summit in Las Vegas, Pastor Cooper explained how and why he decided to simply could not shut down his church and comply with the unlawful decrees of the governor. You know, there's one simple way to deal with that. It was unconstitutional, but more than that, it was immoral. To tell somebody that they had to do something because the rumor is there's something really bad out there that if you don't follow our commands, you could die. Just believe us. Hey, we're from the government. We're here to help. And would we ever lie to you? It says, at a time when many places of worship were deemed non-essential by authorities, Cooper and Sheriff Hamilton joined forces. One Sunday, the sheriff deputized every member of Cooper's congregation so they would be exempt from lockdown orders. So what's that saying? Hey, I got an idea. In order to stop the tyranny, we're going to give you a little taste of qualified immunity. We're going to deputize you, and technically, you're going to become law enforcement, and then you become one of the untouchables. What are they saying here? They're literally saying that what we all say, that badges and uniforms grant special rights in their minds, not legitimately, but in their minds it does. So they're basically saying, hey, because badges and uniforms and the authority of the state grants, special immunities from any kind of liability and from government commands and edicts and tyranny, we're going to deputize the entire church. Now you've got the Kevlar vest of qualified immunity on wherever you go because I magically deputized you. That is not the way to go. Because once the crisis has been averted and being deputized expires, then who's left with the qualified immunity? You don't want to even, here's the danger. You don't want to even imagine qualified immunity for yourself. You don't want to imagine that into existence because you don't want to comply with fiction and propagate falsehood, is the bottom line. It's like, wait a second. No, I'm just going to say no. And we're supposed to have a Second Amendment. Do you realize that if you want to talk about qualified immunity, what's supposed to give each and every one of us qualified immunity or recognize that we have a qualified immunity from government overreach is, let's say, the Second Amendment. It says shall not be infringed. In other words, this person who wants to keep this sort of firearm or RPG or tank in their yard, or maybe you can afford an Apache helicopter, don't mess with them. It shall not be infringed. That's supposed to be your Kevlar. You're supposed to have qualified immunity from government overreach in the Second Amendment. But nobody pays attention to that because the government reserves for itself rights that none of the rest of us have. They reserve for themselves the right to mess with you. They reserve for themselves the right to do to others what they wouldn't want done to themselves. We're supposed to have qualified immunity for freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom to assemble. RAPPS, religion, assembly, petition, press, speech. You're supposed to have immunity from government interference for all that, as stated in the First Amendment. Do you really? No, you don't. You're supposed to be secure in your person's houses, papers, and effects. You're supposed to have immunity from a SWAT team kicking in your door. Do you have that? Dennis and Regina Tuttle in Houston didn't have that. And many, many others who got their doors kicked in. Oh, sorry, we got the wrong house. The reason we shot at them is because they were trying to protect themselves and their families and their property. Yeah, we had the wrong house. The pizza delivery guy never gets the wrong house, but our SWAT team always gets the wrong house. Qualified immunity. So you never want to imagine even yourself to have qualified immunity, because once it's over, and it will be over for you, you don't want it staying on anyone else. Besides, it doesn't apply to qualified immunity, can't apply to anybody ever. Qualified immunity actually implies. When I hear qualified immunity, I hear, oh, I can commit a crime and get away with it, but you can't. That's what I boil it down in my simplistic mind. I can commit crimes and you can't. And that's going to lead us to another legalized theft operation that all these sheriffs, while they're deputizing these people to escape federal government overreach, have some overreach for themselves that they need to answer for. So I'm just going to read some more of this. Together, the pastor and the sheriff duo were a beacon of resilience and faith. Yeah, faith in this fictional concept called qualified immunity, showcasing a model of steadfastness and courage for communities across the nation. No, you know what would have displayed steadfast courage and steadfastness and courage in that community? Just saying no, we're not complying. Not going to do it. We are going to continue operating as free people. And if you mess with us, we will converge and we will defend ourselves. And there might be like this Bundy Ranch Sitting Bull type of scenario where there's going to be a standoff. And then what if every community did that? Do you realize one of the major reasons they stopped prohibition is because people are like, this is ridiculous. We're not obeying this law. And they couldn't enforce it because there were so many people out there doing it. and then it just kind of goes away. And then they create another law, Xing out the law that they just created. So it makes them look like, oh, the only reason it's okay now is because we said so, even though before they created that law that extinguished the other law and got rid of prohibition, people are already on track for screw what the government says. I'm buying, I'm selling, I'm transporting the stuff, and there's nothing you can do about it. Never mind the fact that for the, 1920 to 1933 or thereabouts, for about 12 or 13 years, organized crime just ran rampant and didn't exist before prohibition came online. So in essence, what did the government do? When they instituted prohibition, they brought a whole bunch of organized crime rings and unnecessary murders and unnecessary arrests on innocent people who were just doing the same thing prior to the clock striking 12 in 1920, whenever prohibition went into effect. And then people are like, screw this, we're not doing this. And there ain't nothing you can do about it because there's just a few of you and there's a lot of us. Do you realize we could do that with property taxes? Do you realize we could do that with income taxes? Do you realize that over the course of this coming up weekend or just tonight, we could completely eradicate that concept? We could demand sound money. It's like, I'm sick of my dollars leaking value through the hidden tax called inflation. I demand sound money. Not electronic money, but I'm talking about real physical money backed by real physical gold and silver that you have to really physically do work to actually achieve some kind of value. We could do it. We could do it. As a matter of fact, somebody already has that plan. And I've said this a couple times. I don't remember if I've done this on this channel right here, but we already have something instituted called goldbacks. Do you realize this is real physical gold? This note right here happens to be 1/20th of a troy ounce of gold. If you have 20 of these, you have an entire ounce of gold. It's called the goldback. This is the answer. This is actual sound money, not subject to any inflation. As a matter of fact, because gold prices have gone up, this has inflated. Prices haven't inflated. Well, prices have inflated too, but this has kept pace with it and then some. This actually revalues itself when the Federal Reserve keeps messing with these right here. This is a 1/20th. This is a $50 gold back, which is 1/20th of a troy ounce of silver. And you got it in different denominations. And I'm not just sitting here trying to sell this stuff, but I'm saying there's a system in place. Look, you got $25 gold backs. You got $10 gold backs. I got a whole wallet full of gold backs. You got $1 gold backs. This is 1/1000th of a troy ounce of real gold in your hand. This is gold in your hands. This is gold nugget hammered out and looking all beautiful. So people are like constantly, you're always bitching about the problem, but you never come up with the solution. If you want to put the axe to the root of the tree and eradicate war and eradicate the nonsense, the bought and paid for politicians, the congressmen, the senators, the presidents, then take away their printing press, take away their money supply. Refuse to recognize the thing that empowers them. They wouldn't be spending $200 million, 250, $500 million on campaigns if you had to actually take this stuff out of the ground and then fashion it into gold backs. Yeah, they're overpriced. They're overpriced. But this is the answer to this is something like, it doesn't have to be this, something like this. The reason they're inflated right now is because gold is what, $2,300 an ounce? I don't know. It's hard to keep up. And as these things continue to slide in value, and as we continue to, people continue to move away from this, like Saudi Arabia and China and Russia, they no longer want to deal with our dollar anymore. Continue to see prices escalate and these continue to devalue as people turn away from these and turn these into America's like, screw that. We don't even want this. This is a scourge. The dollar is a scourge. Then expect gold to just spring to the moon, man, and beyond. So that is a solution. You know, there are people not sitting on their hands or creating technologies that create alternate markets that will compete with and will win over the Keynesian economic system of insanity. You know, the governor said, well, churches are not essential. Pastor Cooper recounted, reflecting on the unprecedented challenge, turning to biblical tenets. And there's so much hypocrisy here. We're going to unearth it right now. Turning to biblical tenets and the courage imbued by faith, Pastor Cooper communicated to his congregation the imperative to stand firm. Stronger than the you know what is fear, and we can't bow to the spirit of fear. Facing an unsettling voicemail from the state police deeming their church non-essential, Pastor Cooper, his conviction didn't waver. Instead, he sought an ally in an unexpected quarter, the local sheriff. Here's where the hypocrisy comes in. Despite having no prior relationship, this crucial partnership would underscore the essence of community resilience. Sheriff Glenn Hamilton's response was unequivocal. Pastor, I'll defend you even if I got to go to jail, he declared. As a testimony to God-given rights, he swore to uphold over yielding to perceived government overreach. Now, here's where I'm going to explode this whole hypocritical mindset of this sheriff. I don't have proof, but I have little doubt that Sheriff Glenn Hamilton signed on to this document. Do you remember this document right here? This is the document written by, and I'll show you this at the end, Sheriff Jim Skinner for the National Sheriff's Association, signed on by 3,086 sheriffs in the National Sheriff's Association, asking Dan Red Flag Law Crenshaw to please stop with the HR 1525 FAIR Act, which would severely hamper the power of civil asset forfeiture. And you know what civil asset forfeiture is? That's that law enforcement legalized theft operation where, for example, Stephen Lara was trying to make his way from his home in Texas to visit his daughters in California. He was stopped by the Nevada Highway Patrol and they seized $86,000 in cash of his hard-earned labor. This guy is a former Marine, and they abused his guy, took his money on roadside, and the only reason they gave it back is because that video went viral, and the Institutes for Justice went to bat for him. They gave his money back because the Nevada Highway Patrol got shamed because they committed a roadside piracy operation in broad daylight on body cam. So these same sheriffs, and when I say I have no doubt that it includes this sheriff who deputized this church, is because if you look it up, there are only 3,144 counties in the United States. Each county doesn't have a sheriff. As a matter of fact, there are some states that don't have, like some whole states, I think Connecticut is one of them, that don't have a sheriff at all. And they represent like 40-something counties. So we're talking about the majority, probably 96, 98% of sheriffs signed on to Sheriff Jim Skinner's plea to Dan Red Flag Law Crenshaw to keep civil asset forfeiture intact, while this pastor is sitting here going, hey, I'll deputize you to keep you from tyrannical federal government overreach. It's just hypocrisy. It's evil. It's fiction. Says the sheriff. And then there's more hypocrisy in this on the religious aspect too. The sheriff's presence in the church donned in full regalia was a powerful message of unity and lawful support, affirming we're not shutting this church down. Well, you shouldn't in the first place. It's called civil disobedience. Just disobey. Don't comply. That's what the colonists did to start the revolution. It's like, nope, we're not obeying you, king. Screw you. Not paying your tax, not doing your nonsense. And that's what the Declaration of Independence is all about, outlining exactly the problem they had with King George. Hey, George, we got a problem with you. This partnership culminated in a bold move, the deputization of the entire congregation, an act which uniquely positioned them within law enforcement exemptions during shutdown orders. So what is that saying? Well, cops have more rights than you do, so let's just make you all cops. That's a bad. Sounds good. Sounds powerful. Might have been effective. Really bad move in the long run. Pastor Cooper highlighted the importance of this pivotal moment, underscoring the sheriff's role, that barrier between a tyrannical government that seeks to oppress and your God-given rights. Pastor Cooper's message to fellow clergy was unambiguous. We've got to stand. Then that's all you had to do. Just stand against it. Say, no, we're not doing it. We're not going to comply. Going to throw all of us in jail? Oh, well, guess you got to fight with all of us. He invoked Revelation 12, reminding pastors of their sacred duty to hold the line against governmental mandates that conflict with divine commandments. Cooper's rationale was clear. The only thing worse than somebody dying of you know what is that they die of you know what without Jesus Christ, their Savior. And then he says right here, where is it? Where is it? Throughout this odyssey, the spirit of cooperation between civil and spiritual leadership was exemplified. We saw a convergence between shepherds and sheriffs co-laboring and working together. The pastor, courageous journey. Where does it say it? Where was it? Oh yeah, here it is right here. Inspiring Acts 5:29, affirming we ought to obey God rather than men. Well, you see, the only problem with that is we got this little issue of Romans chapter 13. Which says, let everyone be subject, be an underling of, be a servant of the governing or controlling authorities. For there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. And then it says, consequently, whoever rebels against the authority, in other words, if you rebel against government, you're rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. Imagine that. The Holy Book says, if you don't obey the government, you are going to bring God's judgment on yourself. That's what it says. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right. That's not true. We got people doing right all the time. All they're doing is recording and questioning police, and they get thrown to the ground. They get slapped with the torture cuffs. They get treated by dogs. They get their teeth kicked in. They get their heads beaten. They get beaten in the patrol car with their hands tied behind their back. They get body cavity searched. Rulers hold no terror for those who do right. Yes, they do. There is terror. You can be doing right, and the tyrannical jackboot thug pig, let's go ahead and call him. Let's go. Anybody with me? Jackboot thug pig. That tyrannical guy just did evil to somebody who was doing right. Somebody who wasn't doing wrong. Somebody who was minding their own business. He was riding his bike. Oh, he didn't have a reflector. We need to go dogpile him. Oh, that person right there didn't turn their turn signal on. He needs to make himself insecure in his person's houses, papers, and effects. And give me that papers, please. Papers. Oh, we're supposed to obey that? This pisses me off, man. Rulers hold no terror for those who do wrong. Or do right. That's wrong. But for those who do wrong, do you want to be free from fear of the one in authority? Oh, so there's an authority over me because some words in some book says so? I don't buy that. I don't believe that. Do you? Do you believe that somebody has legitimate authority over you? They have a higher claim over your life, your property, your earnings than you do? Really? Really? For the one in authority is God's servant for your good, then how are they constantly doing bad? All these authorities, politicians, senators, congressmen, presidents, police officers, sheriffs, deputies, mayors, all these people in authority, you will submit to my authority. They're there to do us good. We're free. Do you want to be free from the one in authority? Then do what is right and you will be commended. We're going to be commended by people who make their living doing what is wrong. What a psyop. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for rulers do not bear the sword for no reason, for they are God's servants. Can you imagine? Joe Biden is God's servant. Your local sheriff, your local police chief and captain, your local police department is filled with God's servants. The NYPD, who is labeled by the Mullen Commission as corrupt as the day is long, are God's servants? Well, that makes me question, okay, what God are you a servant of? The God of the underworld? They are God's servants, agents of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. Then why are they constantly bringing punishment on somebody like, oh, I don't know, say Karen Garner? Why are they jerking 72-year-old dementia patient Karen Garner's shoulder out of her socket and then throwing her into a cage with her hands cuffed with torture cuffs and then mocking her outside of her cell as the demented Austin Hopp and Daria Jalali and Sergeant Metzger are outside making fun of her? Oh, yeah, look at this. This is where I throw her to the ground. Isn't this funny? $3 million the Loveland Police Department cost taxpayers. And Austin Hop and Daria Jalali, they may have lost their jobs and gone to jail, but they didn't get near what you would have got because of qualified immunity. Therefore, it is necessary to submit to the authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also as a matter of conscience. Romans chapter 13 is actually saying if you want a clear conscience, you need to bow down to and submit to the psychopaths. Frickin' amazing. Frickin' amazing. Check out the, yeah, that's probably beyond the scope of this. Let me just say this. If you are in the, what is it, northern Sarasota, Tampa area, man, I feel for you guys because it last I checked, it was a Cat 4, and now Milton, they're projecting a Cat 5, and they're projecting some major devastation. So be careful there. Let me just close this out by asking you the question that I asked at the very beginning of this. Is there such thing as badges and uniforms, costumes, and authority of the state? Does that constitute more rights than the rest of us have? The badges and uniforms grant special rights. If the answer is no, then deputizing a congregation to escape the wrath and tyranny of the federal government is nonsense. Outright nonsense. Don't accept qualified immunity for yourself, and never accept qualified immunity for somebody else. Never accept that somebody is an authority over you and you are a subject under them. There's nobody under you and there's nobody over you. We are all on the equal plane. And one of the reasons we have World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, the reason we have devaluation of the dollar and Zio International Banking Cartel creating money out of nothing and devaluing our time and labor is because people imagine that others have more authority than us. That is the kernel of what is wrong with our world today. Am I saying that we shouldn't have, that there's no such thing as leaders and that there's no place for leaders in this world and there's no place for followers? I'm not saying that at all. But if you can't opt out of this current government system, this current corrupt government system by saying, no, I'm not going to do it. You can't conscript my sons off to war. Not going to happen. And don't try to label me as the bad guy and label me as a draft dodger. Nope, you can't have a percentage of my hard-earned product of my time and laboring energies. And don't label me as a tax evader. Oh my God, he's a tax evader. How dirty, how horrible. It's like, no, that's your obligation as a human being, to evade theft, to evade conscription. Am I saying that there's no place for leaders? No, but there's a big difference between leaders and rulers. Leaders are like, hey, I'm going to take you down this path that I know because I have some wisdom and you have some ignorance. That doesn't mean you're stupid. You're just ignorant about this particular area. So if you want to, go ahead and follow me because I'll lead you on the correct path, and it'll be a more sure path, a more stable path, and we'll lead you to safety. That's a leader. But a ruler goes, nope, you only got one of two choices. It's Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. That's the only two choices you got. In other words, it's banker puppet number 1 or banker puppet number 2. Don't worry. Yeah, we're both for red flag laws. Yeah, we're both for the devaluation of the dollar. Yeah, we're both for beefing up the military and the prison industrial complex, but there are vast differences between us two. It's the Dog and Pony Show under the big top. Just sit back, relax, grab some popcorn and a cold drink. The show is about to begin. No, thanks. Nope. So there's a difference between a ruler and a leader, and never the twain shall meet, because a ruler is not going to be a leader. He wants to force you into a relationship. He wants to force you to do what he says to do. And if you don't do it, then he's going to punish you. It's this idea that he's got a higher claim over your life and property than you, and you have an obligation to obey his rulership or you're going to be punished. Screw that. That's why I got a problem with this right here, deputizing people and saying, oh, we'll take some of our qualified immunity pixie dust and we'll sprinkle it over this church congregation. Now look, the government can't touch you. Now we got to get away from that childish mindset. It's nonsense. If you agree, whether you agree or disagree with what I said in this video, share it with others, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon, give it a thumbs up, share it with everybody you know. Don't forget to subscribe to my email list or my website, highimpactflix.com. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to my brand new channel called The Disturbing Illusion, where we do expose the left versus right paradigm lie, dog and pony show under the big top. You're going to want to look at the last 3 videos right here. And I don't play partisan politics, guys. I'm one of these people that I just want to be free. I want to be left alone. And anybody who doesn't want you to be free and left alone without laying some kind of obligation on you is your enemy. You have a right to be free. You have a right to keep and bear whatever arms you want to bear. You have a right to be secure in your person's house's papers in effect. And if anybody comes against that, they are your enemy. I don't care if it's a Donald Trump or a Kamala Harris or a Joe Biden or a George Bush or a Bill Clinton. I don't care who it is. They are your mortal enemies, and we should view them as such. I will see you guys in the next video.